Kicking off the list at number 10, black cats. Yeah, we'll start this dark list off a little slowly, we'll ease our way into the witch trials. You see a black cat cross in front of you, what's the first thing you think? Bad luck, bad omens, bad stuff? Does that cat belong to anyone? Maybe I should take it home and take care of it. Well, in 1232, Pope Gregory IX, he exposed a cult of witches in northern Germany. Yeah, he wrote an expose called Vox in Rama. He went in deep. He knew some of the ritual words used at these cult meetings. He knew everything, which, in my opinion, a little fishy, right? This guy knows a lot. Were you involved, my dude? What's going on? He exposed the happenings, including the involvement of one black cat. They would oddly kiss it and worship it. Now, at first, when reading about this, I was like, oh no, the cat, what's gonna happen? No, it's good. It was cat worship in this way, which is odd, but better historically. The Pope did afterwards send hunters out to eliminate any cat in sight, so it is pretty dark and scandalous. The level of cats in the mid-1200s was almost at an extinct level. Pretty horrible, right? If only we had all those cats later on in 1347 when, rats carrying the Black Death arrived. We definitely could have used a few cats, but witches. Number 9, flat earth. Okay, it's 2022. We can watch live footage right now from the International Space Station just whipping around us. We can fly to Australia in this day and age. We can have a window seat and watch the entire commute. But there's still a good amount of people today that believe that the earth is flat. How shocking is that? How scandalous indeed. The same guys who believed women were witches were also like, oh, of course the earth isn't flat. That's crazy. How conflicting is that historically? We think any time before Columbus, especially back in the Dark Ages, we have this general idea that they didn't know anything, specifically the scale of the planet or even the universe for that matter. We're still launching telescopes into space to record the edges of the galaxy. There's so much we don't know today, yet there's still flat earthers. Shocking enough, the Middle Ages didn't see many of those. In the 13th century, navigators were regarding the earth as a sphere, with 4 cardinal points as well. Even going back further, looking at ancient Roman days, in 77 AD, Pliny the Elder, the ancient philosopher, also agreed on the Earth's shape. It was common knowledge, dare I say, even in the Dark Ages. So if you know any flat earthers, send them this link, and then also send them a link of the ISS. I don't know. Number 8, red hair problems. Alright, if you're a redhead out there, I'm sorry about this one. I had to talk about it. History can be ugly sometimes, and more often than not, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Historically, urine has been used for the greater good. Teeth whitening, Roman laundry days, urine makes leather soft. We get it. The Spanish Inquisition brought with them the idea that red hair was a sign of witchcraft. Yeah, the sign of the devil himself. The manuscripts published at that time about redheads too didn't help. They were horrible. The Proverbs of Alfred warns against having a redhead as a friend. And then another manuscript, Secretum Secretorum, warns against using redheads as advisors. Yeah, not even a work friend. Sorry, Big Chad. 14th century manuscripts tell me that you're working for the devil, so now we can't talk to you, all because you have nice hair. Another manuscript from the 14th century believes that redheads are rarely faithful in both friendships and romantic relationships. Yeah, if you have a redhead partner, don't go through their phone, okay? Don't listen to the Spanish Inquisition, okay? Don't listen to the devil. They're not working for the devil, okay? They're just fine. They're redheads. Freckles as well. If you had freckles in the Middle Ages, good game. Number 7, Maximilien Robespierre. On July 27, 1794, French revolutionary Maximilien Robespierre and 21 of his followers were all arrested at the Hotel de Ville in Paris. Now, considering that this was 1794 and we got arrested, what follows is sure to be a public nightmare. The next day, Robespierre and again 21 of his followers were all taken to the Place de Revolution, where they were all executed by guillotine before a cheering crowd. Always a cheering crowd, of course. What else are we doing today? Let's go watch. What history tends to leave out of this part is that Maximilian attempted to take his own life beforehand because he knew his fate was gonna suck with the whole, thing. But when he tried to take his own life, he survived and was left instead with a nasty jaw wound. So in Game of Thrones fashion, the executioner, when the time came, ripped the jaw bandage off first, and then he saw the guillotine. Yeah, again, to a cheering crowd, remember? They all watched all of this unfold. I can't even watch UFC sometimes. You're telling me people watch this? IRL? I'm gonna go throw up real quick. Be right back. Number 6, the eruption. Mount Pinatubo, which is located in the Philippines, was another volcanic eruption that shook up history. A little more recent than the other one. This was on June 15th, 1991. Mount Pinatubo, this massive volcano, erupted into what would be the second largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. Impressive? Yes. Terrifying? Absolutely. Yep, this is very loud and scary. Activity in the volcano first started on April 2nd, 1991, and these things take a little time to, finish up. So that same year, researchers set up seismographs in the area, and by June, the volcano was having a group of progressively shallower eruptions. And then on June 12th, the volcano had its first spectacular eruption, which sent hot ash 19 kilometers up into the atmosphere, which then rained on down to everything around it, which is the worst thing I can imagine. Additional smaller eruptions continued on June 13th, which then led to some intense seismic activity. And then on June 15th, the volcano once again went off, this time sending a cloud of ash 40 kilometers into the atmosphere. So bye-bye sun for a little bit. This one's gonna linger.
For number 5, we're getting a little spicy with risque men's clothing. Now, you may have already heard stories or seen memes about ridiculously long pointed shoes and groin-flattering armor, but did you know that provocative men's clothing was all the rage for a period of time in the medieval era? It's recorded that in the late 14th century, men were quite keen to be seen in overtly short tunics and thin tights. By 1463, a modesty statute had to be passed, as men had upgraded to wearing cod pieces publicly, which did cover their mostly exposed genitals, but only by making them look cartoonishly large and bulbous in the process. A similar escapade happened with the Krakow shoe. These long, pointy-ended shoes were sometimes so long that they had to be tied back around the wearer's ankles or reinforced inside with a whalebone. The same statute in 1463 also addressed limiting these Krakow shoes for those reasons. Seems like there may be a little bit of a compensation theme here. Both provocative dressing and shoe length were limited to those of extreme wealth after the statute passed, but that didn't stop the development of some more outlandish beauty standards. For example, number 4 in our countdown is plucked bear. Nowadays, whether you're scrolling through an app or walking down the road, you're likely to see advertisements for eyelashes and hair accentuation services. And while that may be pretty trendy and normal to us, now, in the medieval ages, having hair on your face would have actually made you stand out in a crowd. Women would remove their eyebrows, eyelashes, even significantly reduce their hairline so as to achieve a smooth egg-like effect. This was because the forehead was considered the center point of the face for many years, and so it would make sense to remove anything on or around it so as to accentuate it, right? Maybe. Moving on. If you're tired of her plucking herself bald, and she's tired of you wearing shoes that enter a room before you do, then maybe it's time for a good old-fashioned medieval divorce by combat. That's right, you heard me. Coming in at number 3 is divorce by combat. This finding was discovered in a historic German manuscript that laid out rules as to how divorce by combat was to proceed. Their decision to use combat as a means to solution was not unusual for medieval Germany, as trial by combat was part of their law system. Trial by combat was legally sanctioned duel that ensured whomever was to win the fight was deemed right. There are many ways that these duels could be fought, and various weapons and locations in which to have them. The divorce by combat trial was placed when a man was put into a 3-foot deep hole with one hand tied behind his back. The woman, however, would have a normal ground and be able to move freely. This was believed to ensure a fair fight between the sexes. Now, there is some evidence that the outcome of these trials could still end in death, even if the death was not as a result of the combat. It's said that if the man lost to his wife, he would be taken from his hole and executed in the town square. If the woman lost, she would be then placed in the hole and then buried alive. So yeah, I'd say maybe try talking it out a little bit first before resorting to a public throwdown that can end in death. And while we're on the topic of trials, number 2 on the countdown is trials of the dead. Who would have such a vendetta with the dead that they would have them unburied to stand a trial? Well, new Pope Stephen, that's who. In 897, the months-old body of Pope Morpheus, the first pope to ever be executed, was extracted from his grave to serve trial for his alleged usurping of papacy. The new pope donned the corpse in elaborate robes and even assigned a deacon for defense. You may be wondering why the new Pope Stephen had done this to his predecessor. Since a holy person's body was considered to become a holy relic in death, it became a holy rite to display their corpse in public tombs or churches so petitioners may still visit their former saint to leave tokens or deliver prayer. What better way to ensure that you have devoted attention of the community than a postpartum smear campaign where your opponent can't defend themselves because, well, they're dead. Stephen found the deceased Pope Morpheus guilty so that he could toss his body into the Tiber River, as nobody can venerate his relic if his body is lost at sea. That's a pretty intense way to usurp the person who had the job before you. Joke's on Stephen, however, as shortly after this trial, he was executed just like his predecessor, making him once again come in second to Morpheus. Call it karma. With that dose of crazy, we can move on to medieval madness, which ranks at number 1 in our countdown. What was the medieval madness? Well, if you're a fan of rye bread, you may not want to listen in on this. In an era without refrigeration systems as well as poor hygiene, produce was left to natural elements. As a result, mold and bacteria growth was common and would of course migrate into food. Ergot mold is the most well known for its effect on the brain. It caused wild hallucinations and extreme emotional changes as the chemicals in your brain became imbalanced. The consumption of this mold and bacteria has had a variety of exclusively unpleasant side effects, such as vomiting, diarrhea, convulsions, delayed visions, even mania and psychosis. These symptoms make it obvious as to why this could be labeled as a madness. The extreme cases of ergot consumption would of course lead to things such as loss of limb, gangrene, or death. And this connection between molding rye flour and ergot poisoning wouldn't be made until 1670. So for hundreds of years beforehand, commoners saw ergot poisoning to be things like demonic possession. Many theorize and connect the medieval madness to that of the time periods of the witch trials. The trials began in 1691, a year of intensive wet and cold which produces a higher level of ergot. They ended abruptly in 1693, a year said to be sparse on rye grain. If there's less to consume, there's less ability to be poisoned, making it arguable that there could be a connection between the two, especially as a side effect of ergot poisoning could be mistaken as demonic possession, as previously mentioned, and that is also seen as a symptom of witchcraft. Still, this may not be the kind of bread you want to chase.
Starting our list off at number 10, Lake Neos. We love talking about Pompeii, we can't get enough of it. I'm fascinated. They have a restaurant that's back and open now in Pompeii. It's crazy. Now that's quite the eruption. Historically, that's a bad one. That's pretty scary. But a recent eruption in 1986, well, we don't talk about this one enough. First of all, a limnic eruption is a rare event, so you can sleep not in fear tonight. It occurs when CO2 dissolved in deep water lakes suddenly erupts. Cause yeah, that can happen. Who knew that? That's why I don't like lakes. There you go, right there. These events have only been observed twice, the deadliest being Lake Neos in 1986. When a limnic eruption occurs, large clouds of CO2 form, which then all of a sudden descend and drop below the oxygen in the air, causing all living things in the vicinity to choke and not survive anymore. In this case, the cloud fell on nearby villages, ultimately causing the deaths of 1,700 people and 3,500 livestock. Number 9, the Spanish flu of 1918. The Spanish flu of 1918. Okay, yeah, this one's probably pretty good. Since we know a little something about plagues now in real life and toilet paper and stress, let's turn the clocks back 95 years when the Spanish flu entered the game. What was it like back then? The Spanish flu, if you didn't know, it was a strain of the H1N1 virus, which we all know as well. And when it hit, it took 50 to 100 million people. Very fast. 4% of the world's population gone. Now, it was recent and it was quite horrible. We couldn't stay home and watch Ozark for that one, so instead, the Spanish flu is said to have spread so violently because of soldiers being in close quarters during World War I. Yeah, again, very different than our plague. Immune systems were shot as is, and you're telling me a plague rolled through while we're in trenches? No way, what a nightmare. But just like that, the virus disappeared. Better treatment, perhaps it mutated into a much weaker strain. Either way, great, stay gone. Get out of here. Go away and stay there, pal. Hit that thumbs up for the Spanish flu not being around. Awesome, we love that. It's a good one to not have. Number 8, the Great Dying. This name's pretty accurate if I'm being honest myself. Scariest environment imaginable. Here we go. Turning the clocks and solar system back 252 million years ago, the Permian Triassic extinction, which for convenience sake we'll call the Great Dying, was and hopefully shall remain the largest extinction event on Earth. The fact that we're even alive right now, watching this video, clicking that thumbs up and subscribing, well, it's all pretty rare, all things considered. This was a butterfly effect triggered by a massive volcanic eruption around the Serbian Traps in Russia. A runaway greenhouse effect was responsible for the loss of 95% of all marine life and 70% of all land animals. So everything, pretty much everything's gone. Temperatures rose as the sea began to absorb large quantities of CO2 from the atmosphere. Mentioned that a little earlier, and that could not be great. And it began turning into carbonic acid, hence all that marine life that didn't make it. Methane hydrate then started to bubble from the ocean surface, which is horrifying to imagine, and it raised the temperature even higher at that point. Now, imagine if this didn't happen. We'd have those scary sharks still swimming around. We're remnants of the surviving 4% of the Great Dying. Yeah, tell all your friends that. I'm gonna add that to my LinkedIn. That sounds not half bad. Yeah, I survived the Great Dying, so yeah. Really good at scooping ice cream. Let's do it. Number 7, Macbeth's Curse. Every curse starts somewhere, okay? All you theater kids out there probably know about this one. I feel guilty talking about this. Here we go. There's a few things you can't say to an actor before a show, and oddly enough, good luck is one of them. Yeah, you're supposed to say break a leg. All these theater traditions you can't break, okay? You're about to go on and do Shakespeare and do like this huge monologue wearing funky shoes. You gotta be in the zone, okay? You gotta, you know, it's like game day. Even actors have their playoff beards, you know what I mean? It's like a ritual, you gotta stick to it. This legend goes back to 1606, the time of Macbeth's first performance. The actor playing Lady Macbeth died right before the show, sadly, so Shakespeare had to step in and play the part himself. Now apparently at this time, a coven of witches cursed the show. Yeah, since then there's been tales of real daggers being used in the show accidentally instead of prop daggers. The Astor Place riot in New York City back in 1849, that was caused by rival actors both playing Macbeth in their respective productions. There's also countless amount of stories recalling botched performances of the play, but what do we think? Is this the case of being in your own head and we just never dropped it, or is the Macbeth curse real? I don't know. Coven of witches cursing plays. That sounds pretty medieval. I hope it's not real. That would suck. I just got cursed. Number 6, Witch's Curse. More curses. Let's do it. From the 1400s to the 1700s alone, there were around 50,000 individuals who were all found guilty of witchcraft and wizardry. And we all know what that meant. But how many of those were actual witches? Like really, was this a real thing? Were any of them actually found guilty? Was any of them the Red Woman from Game of Thrones? Like, you know, did she do anything? We'll start with a woman named Mother Shipton. Mother Shipton, aka Ursula Southiel. She was a clairvoyant from the 16th century, England's greatest, if that. Her mother as well was a widely known witch, which is a little dark. But Ursula, she was good at her job. She was often compared to Nostradamus, so she was using her passed on abilities for the greater good. Again, greater good, the middle-aged greater good. She predicted the execution of Mary Queen of Scots, and she also predicted the internet. Yeah, in the 16th century, she predicted that thoughts around the world shall fly in the twinkling of an eye. It rhymes, so you know she was on a good streak. Mother Shipton actually passed away a peaceful death, believe it or not. She wasn't hunted down by a mob or anything like that. She was actually buried on unholy grounds in 1561, which is insanely bizarre for a witch at any time. And the fact that people compared her to Nostradamus and she wasn't, you know, shocking. Dare I say, we have a good one. A nice good one for a halfway point. Number 5, Basket of Bees. Guess what this one is? It's pretty much, that's exactly what it is. It's horrible. We often look at ancient Rome as the birthplace for numerals, modern plumbing, social life, all that good stuff. Don't get it twisted, ancient Rome had a lot in common with the Dark Ages as well, okay? The punishments that they would inflict on others, horribly creative, I'll say that. Like for example, a basket of bees. A basket of bees, there we go. Maybe wasps, who knows, I don't know. History gets all crazy, you know? This punishment saw the victim placed in a large woven basket, naked, might I add. Then the basket was hoisted up near a beehive, of course, and then Romans would just anger the hive. They would just shake the basket. And then in turn, all these bees would sting said victim to death. This was meant to be a long and painful death, but eventually, this is how humans realized folks were allergic to bees, because they would meet their demise a little too fast, you know? Romans would be like, what happened? What's going on? Are we going home now? That's it?
Number 4, the Colosseum. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Right? No, I'm asking you, I don't know, that's a saying, I think I've heard that somewhere. The word Colosseum is a Latin noun formed from the word colossus, meaning gigantic. And it's huge! It once held more than 50,000 people at one time or another. That's literally the Yankee Stadium. This oval stadium was built from cement, limestone, and volcanic rock. Yeah, that thing ain't going anywhere. Historians and archaeologists are still discovering and unearthing secrets of this site. In fact, most of Rome still hasn't even been dug up yet. What? That's right. In fact, only about a tenth lays discovered, with the other 90% still somewhere around 30 feet below street level. Who knows how many wonders of the world lay unearthed. The Colosseum, also known as the seventh wonder of the world, lays megalithic, 615 feet above the ground at the center or heart of the city. It is the largest ancient amphitheater ever built, and it is still the largest standing amphitheater in the world today despite its age. Its use for the last 1,000 years were rampant with events, festivals, and would even flood its center to reenact naval wars with real ships. How did they get those things in there? I bet that's how they made the bottle in the ship thing, just kinda. And all that water? Just a guy with a giant hose? Yeah, go ahead, turn it on. Yeah, we're gonna be here a while, guys. We gotta push the play.
Number 3, boot and rally. The Urban Dictionary added the old boot and rally back in 2002, but Romans, back in the ancient day, they were way ahead of us. Romans knew how to get down, and they also knew how to get it back up. Yeah, ancient Romans would boot and rally in order to continue eating and drinking. What would normally be a red flag at any house party or event was a sign of respect back then. These banquets, these were social events, okay? They were nothing like Tyler's toga party last Halloween. It's not the same at all. Same amount of puke, not the same theme. Attending these parties was a sign of social standing, so you wanted to be around the longest. You wanted to drink the most, dance the most, converse the most, and also, yeah, puke the most. No playing around in Rome, okay? I wouldn't last 2 hours at one of these. Kyle knows what's up, he's seen it. I bring Tums to the bar now, you know what I mean? I'm always prepared. The solution in ancient Rome was actually quite simple, long before Tums. See, what you would do is you would excuse yourself from dinner, go across the hall to the vomitorium, then you would grab a feather, any feather you like, and then you would just go, and then put it back, and then go right back to dinner. Then enjoy more lobster, because, hey, now you made room.
Number 2, gladiators. If you've seen the blockbuster hit Gladiator with Russell Crowe, my name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, then you absolutely nailed it, because that's pretty well it. A stew of slaves, lawbreakers, and ex-soldiers, the Gladiator games were one of Rome's most brutal and vibrant live events. Gladiators would be held underground under the Colosseum until they would be called upon to spill the blood of both man and animal in sport. Fighters would be matched based on their size, previous record, skill level, style of fighting, and years of experience, just like the professional contact sports today. Fighting out of the red corner at 195 pounds, the reigning victor, Spartacus! Oh, you're Spartacus? Oh, sorry. No, you're Spartacus. Okay. But it wasn't all thumbs down for these fighters. Gladiators were the celebrities of their time. Yeah, you can take that. There you go. Okay, one. We'll do one. Some gladiators even fought years after earning their freedom. Those years did not seem to be that long, with the average lifespan of the gladiator, though, living just to their mid-20s. I mean, it's pretty physical. The event was not just to kill your opponent. In fact, months of training and preparation was had. There was more of a spectacle of sportsmanship then, most of the time wounding their enemy, which would lead to the slow demise of a fighter, usually ranging between anywhere from 8 to 10 fights in their whole career. Come on, dude. 50,000 people cheering you on at the Yankee Stadium? Kyle! 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 Oh, no!
And finally, number 1, fast food. Imagine getting a Happy Meal in 45 BC. You just get a toy of like Spartacus, just, oh, that's nice, I'll put it on the window. Romans were indulging in fast food before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 BC. They were having a good time until they weren't. Archaeologists recently excavated a thermopolium in the ruins of what was once thriving city of Pompeii. We found a snack bar in 2019 and it's since been reopened. Yeah, you can now pick up shifts once again at this restaurant that was open thousands of years ago. As of last August, the restaurant, located at the intersection of Silver Wedding Street and Alley of Balconies, they would serve pork, snails, beef, fish, you name it, and the corner also doubled down and crushed fava beans, more often than not mixing them with wine. So it was a good time, it was social. This was bumping on a Saturday night. The closest thing we have to ancient restaurants in Canada now is like coffee time. I don't know, every coffee time in Canada looks like it was damaged by Mount Vesuvius. Looks abandoned. The walls are broken in, nobody's working. I'm like, can I get a coffee? Hi, hello?
Eating with the rich starts off the countdown at number 10. Medieval recipes depict a large variety of animals being served. Adding to the ones I listed previously are horses, lampreys, cranes, and crows. Hell, even beavers. And let's not forget the animals created by their chefs. One homemade animal was called a cockatrice, and it was actually multiple animals' bodies put together before being roasted. A helmeted cock was another chef creation. It was a roasted chicken wearing a tiny helmet that was sat on the back of a roasted pig, because Why not? Dinner and a show is always fun, so in late medieval Europe, it became fashionable to have an entremets, which was an entertainment dish. One such example is bakers cooked a pie shell in advance, and then after it cooled, they placed live birds inside the pie and resealed it. When cut at the table, the birds would then all fly out of the pie, much to the amazement of the many banquet guests, assuming that all went accordingly. FIFA fans may want to skip out on this next one because number 9 in our countdown is making football illegal. That's right, while I may be referring to it as primarily soccer in this video, what was still called football at the time was made illegal in the medieval ages. Now there are quite a few reasons for this. Most popularly known is that the sport was extremely different then. It was violent and aggressive, resembling more of a mass brawl with minimal rules. However, it was also because only 2 years after soccer was banned in 1363, King Edward III would implement a mandatory archery education law. This would ensure his villagers could be used as soldiers should need be. King Edward believed that soccer, but also sports in general such as handball, football, hockey, and cockfighting were distractions, and at that time they could be doing better things. I'm sure there are many of you that would disagree. Next on the countdown is number 8, the future predicting friar. There's a lot to unpack here, so I'll just jump right in. English Franciscan monk Roger Bacon is known through history for his shockingly accurate predictions of the future transportation and life that we have now. Bacon lived from 1214 until 1292 and was the successful creator of the magnifying glass, but he also famously predicted future machinery in his book Espetola de Secretis Operibus, if I got that right. Cars can be made so that without animals, people will move unbelievably rapid, and flying machines can be constructed so that a man sits in the midst of a machine, revolving some engines by which artificial wings are made to beat in the air like a flying bird. It's a little nonsensical, but you can see what he's implying. His other predictions included steamships, submarines, diving suits, and telescopes. That's pretty spot on for a guy who lived thousands of years ago. This is the same man who was also said to have sculpted a prophetic head of brass. Apparently, having been warned by a spirit that he must listen to whenever the head first spoke, Bacon set his assistant Miles to watch over the sculpture, which he did even past Bacon's demise. It's said that after the friar's death, however, that was the first time it spoke. First saying, "Time is," then time passed. Ignored both times by a confused Mile, the head spoke only once more to say time is past before it exploded into flames, and so the chance to consult the mysterious head was lost when it combust. What do you think of the legendary Bacon and his stories of mysticism? Time is past, as the sculpted head said, so let's be happy we left this weird tradition in the past. In at number 7 in the countdown, it's the medieval animal trials. Under the ruler's power, there was no exception to medieval law, and so it should come as no surprise that even animals could face the brunt of their alleged crimes. This was no casual affair. The rich and the poor gathered for these trials as spectators. Some of the accused animals were even dressed in wigs and gloves, fancy garments to be seen in front of the royal court as their fate was debated by the lawmakers. That should come as no surprise either, seeing as the medieval era wasn't exactly overflowing with entertainment outlets. There are records of at least 85 animal trials that had taken place during medieval/Middle Ages. And while the most serious offenders were pigs by a landslide, there are records of some roosters and even one donkey facing the judge. What were these animals being charged for, you may be asking? Many times it was the act of attacking or eating humans, as food and grain for animals was so sparse they'd often go hungry. There were also some accused of being heathens or thieves or behaving in lustuous ways. So make sure you have a walking buddy and always look over your shoulder, because I guess you never know when an ill-intentioned cow may be creeping up on you. Number 6 in the countdown is the St. Scholastica Day Riot. February 10th of 1355, a group of students who attended Oxford University decide to go into town for a pint at the Swindlestock Tavern. Little did they or anyone else know that this would be the start of a notoriously famous riot. It started with belligerent complaints to the tavern owner about the quality of their drinks and service. As the tavern owner was progressively more berated, he and other patrons lost their temper with these students. The escalation led to a verbal sparring between the students and bar patrons. Both sides ended up arming themselves, but luckily, things were quickly interrupted when the mayor stepped in and demanded the arrest of the students who had harassed and assaulted the tavern owner, thus sparking this whole disaster. What should have been a peaceful resolution caused a chain reaction, however. Oxford students rose up in protest of their peers' arrest and swarmed to attack the mayor. News of that quickly spread, and the townsfolk revolted immediately. Many of them were already very tired of these students and their entitled complex, and had been waiting for the opportunity to rage against them. The riot that occurred ended the lives of 63 students and 30 locals. While the case's investigation led to Oxford winning against the town in court, the Oxford Council was still made to parade shamefully through the village every year on February 10th, and they did have to pay a fine to the families of each student lost.
Number 5. The Challenger crew. This is a photo that was taken of the, well, clearly the very excited Challenger crew right before when they were walking down the ramp ready to head off on their mission. Now, this photo is chilling, but it's nice to see them happy and together. The crew even included, at the time, 37-year-old Kristen McAuliffe, who was a high school social studies teacher. You may remember this, but your parents definitely do. See, she had won a spot on the mission through a program with NASA called the Teacher in Space program, and she had trained diligently for months in order to be the first ever non-military individual in space. On January 28, 1986, the Challenger mission proved to be faithful just 73 seconds after liftoff. See, 2 rubber O-rings failed because of the cold temperatures that morning, and on live television, the world had to watch as the spacecraft broke apart and then fell into the ocean, sadly taking the lives of everybody on board the craft. Now, I'm not sure if you've watched the documentary on Netflix, but it's a mini-series about this whole thing and it's powerful stuff. It's really emotional. I just finished it and it's moving. Number 4. The core. This photo shows a physicist named Harold Agnew, and while this photo looks relatively normal and scientific or whatever, a non-threatening photo, what he has in his hands is truly devastating. It changed history. Harold is holding the nuclear core of what was nicknamed the Fat Man. Yeah, that thing. This means that Harold is now holding the nuclear core of the atomic weapon that was later dropped on Nagasaki in 1945. The immediate blast took many lives, as well as the long-term effects of radiation illnesses. Now, it's crazy to look at a photo like this because it seems so perfectly normal when he literally has a life-changing, world-ending device in the palm of his hand, like a literal supervillain holding kryptonite. I couldn't imagine seeing that, let alone holding it. No way. My grandmother wouldn't even hold me as a baby because I was too small and fragile. Think she'd hold this? No way. Butterfingers. Butterfingers galore over there. Number 3, medieval barbers. A barber from the Middle Ages. Yeah, that title alone gives me the chills. If I have a toothache, I'm telling no one. That appointment's gonna suck, okay? Cavity, toothache, maybe you accidentally bit a rock, chipped a tooth, whatever. They would only pull it. Worst case, best case, your teeth are getting pulled no matter what. Yeah, barbers were responsible for cutting hair, pulling teeth, and bloodletting. The classic 3-in-1 appointment. Get it all done in 40 minutes or less. There you go. Keep the change, good sir, and a thing of ale. There you go. Get drunk, pull my teeth. Middle Ages. Back in the 1500s, patients were walking in with an arrow sticking out of them, right? Instead of cutting the tip off and then pulling it the opposite way, the arrow remover would cut into the injury, open it more, which would suck, and then it would hold it open. And then the barber would come in and then pull it out in his own barber way. Whatever his qualifications were, it didn't really matter. If he was a barber, he was also pulling arrows out of your back. So you would go in for a toothache and then you would leave with an amputated foot. You never know. Medieval barbers sucked all the time. Number 2, the ducking stool. This next one requires so much effort. I can't believe this was a real thing that real people did. The ducking stool was made to punish women involved in sexual activities. How dare they? How dare thou? Men were punished too, but if we know anything about history, it was mostly women who had to put up with all of this shit. There was the first standard ducking stool, so women would have to, sit in this chair, strap themselves down while sitting outside their houses or, whatever. They get carried down the street. Humiliation at its finest. That was the main key here, where you'd, come out and go, shame, shame for 46 minutes and then go back inside. That was your day back in medieval times. They had sex. Can you believe that? It's disgusting. Let's take the day off work and embarrass them and make signs. The second version of the ducking stool was essentially the same thing, only it was then dunked into a river over and over again to cool her immoderate heat. Yeah, we gotta cool these witches down. Great. I wonder where all these people, do they not realize where they came from? This is the dumbest shit. At least that's what French writer Francois Maximilien Mission says. They should cool off all of those angry villagers instead. They should dip them in the river. They're the ones burning with rage because somebody over here is getting some and they're not. Number 1, meowing nuns. If I'm not going to talk about this one now, then I'm not sure when I'll get the chance to talk about it again. Back in the Middle Ages, a group of nuns were doing their, COVID nun thing, as so many people did apparently back in. And this was odd in the Middle Ages because these nuns would have meowing sessions. Yeah, they wouldn't curse individuals, they wouldn't curse any long sea voyages. No, they would just gather around and meow all at the same time. The French convent, large might I add, many of nuns here, they would spend hours meowing like in sync. They'd be like, meow. It would annoy nearby civilians so much that eventually soldiers had to come in and just beg them to stop. They're like, please stop meowing. I don't know why you're meowing, but please stop. For most of these cases, most likely not witchcraft. This one here with the meowing nuns, I don't know. I think that was actually, something was afoot. That was actually a curse. Either that or it's the greatest prank in history. Either way, we have to finish on a nice happier note, dare I say.
Number 10, Decemviri, the law of 12 tables. Well, actually the word means 10. 10 men, actually. Those special 10 would be the appointed men who would consider themselves the first ever lawmakers. The earliest attempts to create a code of law was the law of 12 tables. A commission of 10 men, are also known as the Decemviri, was appointed 455 BC to draw up a code of law-binding rules on both patrician and plebeian, which would be strictly enforced. Some of these laws included simple laws like, you don't break your word. If the army or king calls on you, you gotta go. And of course, if you hit or hurt someone, you get hit or hurt back. And you owe us some money. This system was the first in its place, holding people responsible for the things that they did and said in Rome. Strategic, fundamental, and important laws like, hey, no crying at funerals, alright? You burn my corn, I'm gonna burn your corn, and I get to burn you. And yeah, no meetings at night. It's dark. Okay, so they missed their mark on a couple of them, but a couple of those laws still stuck around.
Number 9, field surgery. The Romans were fierce on the battlefield, but they were also extremely handy. Who would have thought? This was the first time in history where quick surgeries were performed on the battlefield under the leadership of Augustus. Not Augustus Mayhew, it's a different Augustus, but he's also really helpful, like one time a year. Ancient Roman medics invented hemostatic tourniquets and surgical clamps. Yeah, guy invented clamps. Imagine that on a resume. Roman field doctors would also perform physicals on new warriors. Yeah, they would also combat the spread of disease. Although they were going to war and were constantly being patched up, the Roman military would often live longer than the average folk, because these military men were constantly being disinfected. They were checking their camps all day. Masks are hard in 2020, but the Romans were disinfecting the Colosseum. Nice, we'll get there one day. Maybe.
Number 8, the name Rome. We kinda got into this a little bit about those brothers Remus and Romulus. This barbaric history is loose and from many sources, so I'm gonna kinda sum it up into broad statements. Two brothers, didn't like each other, kept fighting, raised by a wolf and a bird. That's pretty much it. We have seen what these two have looked like. Every statue and painting of these two is always like one of them Stone Cold Steve Austining the other one. One built a wall and the other mocked him and jumped over that wall, and then there was only one. I feel like I made a sandcastle once and Taylor stepped on it, and I can absolutely see how the city was formed. Flawless victory. Yeah, that sounds like brotherly love to me. Rome deriving from its name Romulus, the victor in this legendary sibling quarrel, giving the city its official name. Hey, you got the god of war as your dad, and the mother of all gods and goddesses as your mom? There's gonna be some feeling of purpose just lingering around. Guess I could just make a wall. And with a couple drywall holes later, with the death and defeat of his brother Remus, Romulus claimed his position as king and named the city after himself. Selfish much?
He ain't heavy, baby.
He's my brother.
Number 7, daily acts. In a time before Twitter or Facebook, how else do we get our fake news, right? How do we share our aunt's nonsense? How do we do it? 131 BC, this marked the first time a newspaper was ever used. Well, they're referred to as daily acts at this point, or acta diurna. The saying, written in stone, couldn't have been more historically accurate in this case. See these texts containing information on military or civil issues, death notices, gladiatorial events, you name it. These were commonly written on metal or stone. Your morning news etched into a stone. Imagine the crossword section in 131 BC. Hey honey, who's the neighbor in Simpsons? Flanders, nice, that's it. Ping, ping, is that an F? Ping, It took time and effort. It was exhausting just to get one notice out to the public. So you best take these notes seriously, okay? Imagine YouTube comments written in stone. Took a guy 6 business days to write it, so he meant it.
Number 6, Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was a Roman general and statesman, a member of the first triumvirate. Caesar led the Roman armies in the Gallic Wars, which, well, we've seen and heard about these battles that Julius Caesar led. It's the organized outfit of shiny metal and red, moving slowly and swiftly through the Gauls like a man-made tank before defeating his political rival Pompey the Great, another military leader, and also the husband of Caesar's daughter Julia. Okay, there it is, yeah. That's why he became his nemesis. Political differences. Yeah. Due to these ongoing internal civil wars between the two leaders, Julius Caesar eventually killed Pompey in battle and became dictator of Rome. This was until his assassination in 44 BC. Oh, mighty Caesar, dost thou lie so low? Are all thy conquests, glories, triumphs, spoils shrunk to this little measure? Fairly well. Antony, Act 3, Scene 1. Hey man, eye for an eye. You read the rules. He played a crucial role in the events that led to the Roman Empire and remains one of the brightest and bravest military leaders the world has ever seen. His story can be seen and heard top to tail in William Shakespeare's play simply titled Julius Caesar.
Number 5, Agnes Sampson. And now back to the dark stuff. This one's not as great. Turning the clocks now to 30 years after Mother Shipton, the general public isn't always so easy when it comes to clairvoyance. So around 1590, when King James VI, when he was ruling Scotland, this was an important time because the lovely Anne of Denmark-Norway, his wife, she was very much opposed to black magic or all that voodoo. She wasn't on board at all. During one commute back to Scotland, for example, the couple barely made it through a fierce storm. So King James VI, he was now convinced, because of his wife, that the storms were an outcome of black magic. Yeah, a witch cursed their commute. All because of a storm, they thought this, imagine that. So they charged one Agnes Sampson. The king and the queen all believed that these witches attended a coven on Halloween night, and that's what happened with their commute. So she was held prisoner until she confessed. And then at that point, she finally met her horrible fate. Her nonsensical, horrible fate. Number 4, plague bearer. Okay, if you think your job sucks, hear me out. The hot summer of July 1665. Okay, what do we do with all these poor souls who have been hit by said plague during the Dark Ages? You can't just hide them all in the catacombs this time, right? We can't just hide them in a random place. We don't have that. So a plague bearer is the person that you need. Church wardens would organize burials. This was a normal thing back in the 1600s, but when the plague hit, they had to change things up a bit. Now things were a little bit dangerous. If somebody had the plague, these guys would be responsible for transporting them far, far away and then burying them. Plague bearers, that's crazy. A church would then house these plagued souls far away from society. How grim is that? All because you got sick. But I mean, that's probably a good thing, all things considered, you know? Because anything we learned the past couple years, it's like, oh yeah, things spread. Just a little bit, including misinformation. Haha. Number 3, the Ball of Burning Men. January 28th, 1393. You are formally invited to a masquerade ball. How fun is that? Who is it under that mask? Oh, it's just Taylor on Bumblebee. Love him, he's great. The French Queen Isabeau of Bavaria is now hosting one of the most lavish parties of the decade, right? So bring your finest and longest krakows. Roll it in style. Now, when the French royal court was celebrating the marriage of one of the Queen's ladies in waiting, it of course was a big deal. It's fun, it's a big happy day. For some, the best days of their lives. For others at this ball, not so great. Probably the last days of their lives. King Charles VI had 5 companions perform a dance or a theater routine of sorts. Now they did a performance as beasts. They were committed to the bit, right? They had these big, lovely masks, big baggy outfits, lots of linen, lots of stuffing to appear as if they were real beasts. Now the party was going well, wine was spilling, people were laughing, beasts were roaring, we were committed, but one rule beforehand was put into place before the party started. Absolutely, positively, no open flames. Obviously, right? I mean, look at that guy. He looks like a couch. We're not gonna put a match near him. It's gonna be chaos. The Duke of Orleans had a little too much fun prior to this event, and he forgot the first rule of Fight Club when he arrived. The guy walked in with a lit torch. He wanted to see everyone. Some accounts say he dropped the torch by accident. Others say he got too close trying to guess the identity of said beasts. Either way, this tragic event took the lives of 4 people, hence the name Ball of the Burning Men. That's terrible, imagine that, what a gig. Number 2, the Stanford Prison Experiment. One of the most well-known experiments of all time was the Stanford Prison Experiment. It was an attempt to investigate the psychological effects of perceived power, and it worked. A little too well, I'd say. Guards and prisoners were all chosen randomly, from college students to anyone, your neighbor. You had no idea. Nobody really knew just how bad this experiment would end up, so anyone volunteered. Those in power were taking it to an extreme level. It was absolute psychological distress. Some of the prisoners went insane. The whole exercise was abandoned after only 6 days, which is not a short amount of time, but historians say just 6 days because it was intended to last much longer. Now, it's shocking to see the lengths people go after receiving power over another human being. I thought I was evil unplugging my brother's controller and like playing, and he wasn't plugged in. This is like next level. And finally, number 1, mummified pets. Are you a pet owner? If so, comment down below which animals fill your house. We love that. Olivia and I want to get a dog so bad. I was always a dog guy growing up. My aunt had 3 pugs. It was the dream. I love it. Ancient Egyptians, they fancied a house pet or two. We know this. But Egyptians saw animals as incarnations of the gods, which I do too with my Shih Tzu, of course. The very concept of having a pet came from ancient Egyptians, so thank you. Egyptians were of course fans of cats. That's common knowledge at this point. But did you know they also had the same idea for hawks, lions, dogs, and baboons? Yeah, baboons. That's amazing. Go ask your parents for a baboon as a pet. There you go. I thought dogs doing their business inside was annoying, but a lion? Your arm's gonna be tired scooping that one up. Many of these animals were often mummified and buried with their owners after they'd passed, just like how many owners today cremate their pets. I mean, I'm not sure I would mummify a Shih Tzu, but hey, whatever floats your boat, who am I to judge? Other creatures were specially trained to work as helper animals back then. So ancient Egyptian police officers would use dogs and monkeys to help patrolling. Then they'd mummify them. What a time, imagine that. Number 10, Animal Heaven. This was pretty odd, and we're still talking about it, rightfully so. Coco the gorilla. She was a famous primate known for her ability to communicate through sign language. We've all seen that video with her and Robin Williams tickling each other laughing. It's heartbreaking, it's beautiful. Gorillas are very smart and very strong, so strong. Francine Patterson, who was Coco's trainer and of course the closest human around to Coco, was asked in an interview how deep their conversations with Coco would actually go. The caregiver showed Coco a skeleton once and asked if it is alive or dead. Coco signed, dead, draped. Draped means covered up. Then they asked, where do animals go when they die? And then Coco said, a comfortable hole. And then she gave a kiss goodbye. Yeah, philosophical debates followed, of course, because what was she referring to here? Was Coco being referred to being put into the ground, literally? Or was she talking about an afterlife? A comfortable hole in the afterlife world? I don't know. Gorillas are so smart. And again, so strong. Number 9, Derek Amato. What started with tragedy ended in symphony. Here we go, I had no idea this was possible, and now I'm questioning everything. Derek Amato is a self-taught pianist who gained worldwide attention after a traumatic brain injury caused him to develop acquired Savant syndrome. Derek was diving into a shallow pool back in 2006. Now, his concussion actually made him lose some of his hair and some of his memory. It was bad. But in a bizarre turn of events after the accident, Derek became a musical genius. Guy was killer on the keys, who knew? This condition allowed him to access exceptional music abilities that were for sure not around before the accident. Amato actually released his own album titled Life in the Keys. That's incredible. Tried so many times. Number 8, Catullin. A Mongol princess and descendant of Genghis Khan. Let's talk about her. Catullin is known in history for her undefeated wrestling abilities, if you can say that. She was said to have issued a challenge to any man who wanted to marry her, stating that the first must defeat her in a wrestling match. Now, despite many attempts by many men, Catullin reportedly remained undefeated, with some accounts suggesting she won as many as 10,000 matches. Yeah, Tinder, but make it exhausting. Sure. Instead of a super swipe, she's getting your legs swiped? I don't know. A super choke? Her story has become a legendary tale of strength and independence in Mongolian history. And also, how terrifying is that woman? Imagine being like number 6,000. You're like, I don't think I'm gonna do it. I don't think I'm gonna tap her out. I really have no clue. Number 7, Hector. I'm not referring to the Greek hero Hector. No, not this time. Not this time, Bumblebee. No, I'm referring to the cloud that was named after him. Yeah, we're talking about clouds now because, why not? Hector is a famous cloud formation that appears in the Tiwi Islands of Australia. Now, the cloud appears from September to March every single year, every single day, which is Terrifying. What's going on here? The area's unique weather patterns are quite the spectacle. The name Hector's thunderstorm, or simply Hector, which I'm more fond of, that name also comes from a powerful storm that struck the area back in 1930s. A World War II pilot named it Hector, and that's how memorable it was. It's still going strong today. Yeah, today, even right now, I guess, yeah, Hector is still going. Tomorrow, Hector's gonna disappear. It's the last day to catch Hector. It's right now. Go get your last minute views on to Hector. That's crazy. I didn't realize that was today. At this point, he's a popular tourist attraction. Visitors can go and take boat tours to witness the spectacular lightning displays surrounding the storm. Me personally, I want nothing to do with that. I watched Nope recently, so no, this one freaked me out. I don't like clouds that show up on the regular. I don't know. Clouds with a schedule, I'm all set. This next one here, kind of the same kind of thing. Here we go. Number 6, medieval sky battle. This might happen soon. I don't know. Aliens, who knows? Short and sweet, this one. This looks like the inside of my old high school locker, first of all, but this is actually medieval art. This Nuremberg broadsheet shows us a battle, an Avengers level threat, really, if anything. This battle took place apparently on April 14th, 1561. It was an aerial battle involving, I don't know, globes, crosses, tubes, you tell me. I don't know what's going on in the sky, but Iron Man is nowhere to be found. These cigar-shaped UFOs have been breaking the internet recently, and I'm not gonna lie, they kind of look like what we're seeing in that medieval art. Maybe this is the same vehicle. Maybe it's the same battle. Maybe it's gonna happen again. People viewed this event as a divine warning. Yeah, obviously, you don't say. What else are you gonna call that? UFO is flying around, someone's like, I have a bad feeling, Abraham. I don't know, this looks a little odd. Number 5, Abel and Baker. Okay, we often remember Laika the space dog and her 103-minute cosmic journey aboard Sputnik 2. But does anybody remember Abel and Baker? Why don't we talk about these two enough? This was the American version of Laika. This was less than 2 years right after that. It was May 28th, 1959. The United States launched 2 female primates. They launched Abel and Baker into space. This mission only lasted 15 minutes, and they both safely returned back home. That's wild to me. The monkeys weren't injured from the cosmic commute at all. A radio message came in shortly right after they splashed down in the Atlantic, and the message said, no injuries or other difficulties. Thank the Lord, we love that. Abel and Baker, perfect, as they said. I don't think we can blast any more primates into space going 10,000 miles an hour anymore, but it's wild to me that we did this ever. This is insane. A human had to strap in a chimp into a rocket ship and be like, all right, see ya. And then, that's insane. Grown adults had to do that. That's insane. Abel sadly passed away shortly after the flight. Nothing to do with the actual flight itself, just timing. Meanwhile, Baker, she got famous. She was getting 150 fan letters a day. Imagine if she had Twitter. Oh, be wild. These ladies are icons. Never mind Laika, okay? Hit that thumbs up for Abel and then subscribe for Baker. They went in space. That's crazy. Number 4, asteroid redirection. Speaking of space, this one has Michael Bay written all over it. I can't wait. I'm pretty excited for this project. I can't even catch a baseball with my hands. You're telling me NASA is gonna catch an asteroid hurling through space? This is the future. We've arrived. NASA landing on an asteroid is one thing. Sure, that's, you know, a Michael Bay movie. But their asteroid redirection mission, that's a whole nother level. This coming Monday, as in like 4 days from now, I don't know, NASA is gonna broadcast its first attempt to modify the orbit of an asteroid, hurling through space. This is real life. And before you start to panic, no, there's no way any debris can hit the Earth after said test. But if an asteroid was coming for Earth, well, now we have a backup plan to hopefully, ideally, save the human race and the planet. That would be helpful. That's always handy. The planetary defense team is using a craft called DART, just sending a dart out there. You got a dart? Awesome. Double asteroid redirection test, DART, which will ideally target the asteroid Dimorphos and then altering its orbit. And we can tune in live to watch the whole thing on Monday, because that's where we're at in the future. We can just tune in live and watch Jake Paul fight someone or watch an asteroid get blasted off of its course. How are you spending your afternoon this Monday? Number 3, mass extinctions. Are we part of the 6th extinction? I mean, we're talking about asteroids getting blasted away from Earth. It kind of feels like it. It kind of feels like something's nearing us. It's happening right now, isn't it? We lose thousands of species every year, and when looking in the past, sure, asteroids and ice ages, they've all caused these massive extinction level events, of course. But after humans invented the wheel and discovered fire and became the worst things ever to exist, things started to change naturally. In the 1800s, industrialization drove up extinction rates and continues to do so, obviously. We're not helping the planet by any means. And according to Elizabeth Colbert, across the world, scientists every day are monitoring what could be the largest extinction event since the dinosaurs. Right now. It's happening right now. The way human beings interact with the environment and affect biodiversity, it could be more deadly than an asteroid hitting the Earth. That's a fun, scary fact. Okay. With an ever-climbing list of endangered species, Colbert and the world asked the question, is it too late to change it? Kind of feels like it's too late. Okay, let's move on to something a little more lighter so we don't feel like complete trash. Deal? Deal. Number 2, relaxative. Okay, so right off the bat, the Victorian era was a little messy. I'm sure you figured this out by now, but these messy illnesses were putting a lot of pressure on medical practitioners back in the Victorian day, so they were desperate for new treatments. Sometimes I laugh at Victorian medical treatments, but they tried. And they also achieved many medical breakthroughs, one that I saved for number 1. But when it came to handling chickenpox in the Victorian era, that wasn't our finest hour. No, we didn't figure that one out, I don't think, right off the bat. Chickenpox in the Victorian era was being treated by using laxatives. Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. I have chickenpox. What should I do, doc? Just go take a shit. Or 6, I don't know, might help. Yeah, folks would slam some castor oil and then, ready for this? They would get even more sick. Yeah, who would have thought, right? You thought you were uncomfortable before. Well, not even close. Not every answer was a solution in the Victorian era. But this one was. And finally, number 1, the discovery of penicillin. Thank God this one happened. We'll still talk about this one because it's a really good one. Sometimes miracles happen when nobody is in the room or no one's looking. That's ideally the best time. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin back in 1928. Now at the time, he was actually studying staphylococcus, which is bacteria that causes infections and boils and all that nasty stuff. But right before Alexander left for a well-earned 2-week vacation, he left a petri dish with some of that staphylococcus right there on the table, just sitting there. Rather than, store it away in an incubator, he just accidentally left it out. Now during this time off, a penicillium mold, the spore just drifted in there, either through a window or up the lab stairwell, some Horton Hears a Who type commute. It drifted in there, and the temperatures of the room and the lack of one Alexander Fleming allowed for the mold to fight back. And then miracles literally happened. It then prevented that bacteria from growing anymore. So he returned and discovered this antibacterial substance was only produced by strains of penicillium. So now we have a solution that isn't a laxative. You know what I mean? Now we have some things that help us out medicinally. Yeah, we got asteroids, some medicines, some horrible history, some dark tragic events. We got it all on this list, really. I don't know how to tell you that.
Number 10. The Doomsday Book, 1085. The Doomsday Book was created under William I, also known as William the Conqueror. Like, you're already the first, man. You don't need 2 names, come on. This guy basically drew up a book to document people's money so that he could tax them. Oh yeah, this is the very first time surveyors went town to town and recorded how much money you would owe for simply just doing you. Men would show up at your house asking how much money you made and document your spending habits. 5 shillings on groceries, huh? Okay. And 5 on that phone plan. Look, tax season's coming up, Arthur. It's not looking good, man. Talk about a bunch of crooks, huh? Imagine owing someone money for just trying to make an honest living. Yeah, thank God that didn't catch on, right guys? Oh, speaking of, I gotta phone H&R Block. Number 9, The Crusades. A 3-part miniseries spanning over 200 years. These bloody and ruthless wars were battled between Muslim and Christians for the proprietorship over sacred sites and the land in the East Mediterranean. A 3-part miniseries spanning over 200 years. These bloody and ruthless wars were battled between Muslim and Christians for proprietorship over sacred sites and land in the East Mediterranean. Wars that resulted in 6 million deaths. The Knights Templar, a brotherhood of highly trained soldiers horseback bashing their way through the East. These guys were the real deal, almost like the Navy SEALs of their time. We've seen these paintings. The elite fighting force with the red cross painted on their chests. I wonder if they had to do a Hell Week. These soldiers were the most trained and savage fighters in all the Christian armies. Richard I leading the 3rd and final crusade, earning him the name Richard the Lionheart. Back then the names were always something so aggressive and scary. It was never like Richard the Clownfish or Henry the Pygmy Goat. No, we need fear. way more fear. Number 8. The Magna Carta. The year's 1215. We need some laws, people. This document was one of its kind. A document setting out the laws and limitations from the common man to King John himself. A legal system written down so that there are clear do's and don'ts. No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled, or ruined in any way, nor in any way proceeded against except by the lawful judgment of his peers, and the law of the land. Did you get all that? Write that down. Except women. They don't have laws. And they can't act in plays. Sometimes people needed to face the music. And even animals. Huh? That's right, animals. Being tried in a court. A lively and popular event trying any law-breaking animal from goats to pigs to even chickens. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, did you, Mr. Feathersworth, peck the floor, yes or no? Objection, Your Honor, leading the witness. My brain can't fathom this, guys. Number 7. The Battle of Bannockburn. This infamous battle between Scotland and England was one of the most important battles of the Middle Ages. The end of the bloody war for independence. Basically, Scotland was like, yeah, we're gonna go over here and roll our R's. The gruesome wooden wars were caused by the English invading Scotland in 1296. A leader slowly rising the ranks, William Wallace, the guardian of the King of Scotland himself, holds off the English forces and is knighted a hero to Scotland. Unfortunately, like every hero back then, he was also hated. He was captured, hanged, drawn, and quartered. Like, why do you have to do all that after he dies? Like, he's dead. Not fun. The battles between Scotland and England ended in 1314 with Robert the Bruce securing Scotland's independence, adding like 45 more dialects to the UK. Freedom! Number 6. The Black Death. Ooh, talk about a curveball. The year's 1348. People are saying things like, don't let the bedbugs bite. Clearly not a very clean and safe time. The Black Death, aka pestilence, aka the Great Mortality, or simply known as the Plague. Single-handedly the worst pandemic ever recorded in history, wiping out somewhere between 70 to 200 million people. Ooh, now I get where bless you comes from. Someone sneezed back then and everyone's dead at 14. This is where we see those doctors in the terrifying bird outfits with the long noses stuffed with garlic and herbs. Excuse me? Yeah, he's not wearing a mask. I'm just trying to watch a cat publicly get skinned. Yeah, 6 feet please. Some doctors prescribed urinating on a person so that the bad smell would drive out the infection. Can you imagine? Just a doctor writing you up a script and go ahead and pee on yourself about 4 to 5 times a day. Take with food. Should be gone early next week. And just let me put my mask back on here before you leave. There you are. The plague started in Europe in October 1347 when 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. Most sailors aboard the ships were already dead, but those who were still alive were covered head to toe in black boils that oozed pus and blood. Ugh. Sometimes the Black Death included fever, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, temporary loss in motor skills, and then of course, death. Number 5. Cheers. Located on the banks of the River Shannon in Athlone, Ireland, there's some taps that I hope have been cleaned over the past couple years. Like thousands of years to be exact. Sean's Bar has been serving drinks for nearly as long as people have been drinking them. Along with claiming to be the oldest pub in Ireland, Sean's Bar could be the oldest operating pub on the planet. In fact, in 2004, Guinness World Records issued a certificate to Sean's Bar as the oldest official pub in Ireland. The owner of Sean's Bar says that they found coins that dated to 900 AD, as well as the wattle and daub walls, which is an ancient building technique that mixed mud, wood, and clay together. Legend has it a man named Luan Mac Luachdik started the pub as a local guide to help travelers across the Shannon. Yeah, eventually a small settlement built up around the crossing point and led eventually top to a fully constructed pub. I'm pretty sure people couldn't say the name and just went with something way easier, you know what I mean? Right, are you going over to Sean McCain for a pint after the game? No. Oh, it's Sean's Bar now. Oh, that's much easier. Sean's. I'll meet you, Sean's.
Number 4. The Jim Twins. Back in 1979, a set of twins were reunited. They were 39 at the time. This was of course a big moment in their lives, obviously, because for 37 years they barely knew of each other's existence. When they finally met, the long-lost twins had a bit more in common than anybody ever thought. For starters, both had been named Jim, which is amazing. I spoiled that in the fun title. But their adoptive parents both named the lads Jim. That's crazy. And both Jims loved math and carpentry. Both also had jobs in security at the time of their reconnection, and their ex-wives were both named Linda. And they'd since married a woman both named Betty. I don't know, this is kind of too parallel university for me. Imagine meeting another you, and he's like, yeah, I love surfing and IMAX movies. What are the odds? Like, how specific is this? Are you kidding? No way, that's for sure an alien. He's a Skrull. He's an imposter. Get him out.
Number 3. The Brown Sox. The Great Molasses Flood, aka the Boston Molasses Disaster, was an event that occurred January 1919 in the North End neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. Happy New Year, everybody. Time to get sticky. Yeah, apparently weather temperatures had risen in Boston at the time, and the mixture of cold and hot molasses together mixed, due to the thermal expansion already inside the tank, eventually burst open and collapsed. Yeah, surf's up, dude. 2.3 million gallons of molasses, actually, weighing around 13,000 tons, and resulted in a wave of molasses about 25 feet high. Yeah, just rushing through the streets at an estimated 60 kilometers an hour. Sadly, killing around 21 people and injuring about 150. Yeah, yikes. The event entered local folklore, and residents claimed for decades afterwards that the area still smelled of molasses. Yeah, Boston Brown Sox. How did we miss that? That would have been great. White Sox, Red Sox, Brown Sox, no. It was reported in papers that, quote, everything that a Bostonian touched was sticky, you know? Hey, this brown goop, yeah, it's wicked sticky. Watch your feet.
Number 2, brand new bees. Yes, about time. A lot of us know bees is pretty harmless. They're fuzzy little pollinators. Unless, of course, you're allergic, then in that case, get out of here, just run, we got you. But bees normally do a lot more good than harm. That was, of course, until an experiment in the 70s went south and created an entirely new crossbred evil bee. Awesome, look out, I guess. This experiment was to take a regular honey bee and then breed it with a bee that's found in Africa that produces way more honey. And then, of course, the goal was to produce a manageable bee that would also provide more honey than a regular honeybee, right? Just better stuff. Well, the bees that came out were a lot less manageable, turns out, and they didn't even make more honey. Just an F all the way down. Throw some F's in the chat, boys. After this experiment ended, however, the bees got out into the environment, and in the 80s saw the beginning of some bee trouble. Yeah, they got out. Heads up, guys. New bees. Imagine that, being like, yeah, the bees got out. Yeah, they're new. We don't know. We don't know what they like to do. These bees are not only aggressive towards other kinds of bees, which, okay, relax, world star, that creates a huge problem, but they're also very aggressive towards humans. And when these bees sting you, their stinger stays with them. So they can, keep Julius Caesaring you over and over instead of losing the shank. Victims of these swarms receive 10 times the amount of stings as a regular swarm. Awesome. And they react to disturbances 10 times as fast, and they'll also chase said disturbance a quarter of a mile, so hope you got your running shoes on today. These bees have actually caused at least 1,000 deaths also, so yes, keep your heads up, they're definitely deadly.
Number 1. Tree huggers. Gotta end on a nice one, you know what I mean? Just spent some time up north climbing, planting some trees myself this past weekend, but, the great tree. Yeah, can't really climb this one. The Great Banyan Tree is located in Howrah, India. It's huge, like huge, and beautiful. The entire garden is actually one individual tree that spans 4 acres and is over 80 feet tall, making it one of the natural marvels of the world. Why is this not a UNESCO World Heritage Site by now? It was planted by locals of unknown almost 300 years ago. That's nice. The old Great Banyan Tree has roots that cover vast distances. Yeah, just for some numbers here, that's as wide and round as a Walmart. This thing is bigger than a Walmart. The canopy is all connected like the neural highway of a brain, connecting to each other in one giant labyrinth of root and leaf. Of course, the Sherman tree in California that was planted is the largest tree, but the humanity alone of this sacred tree humbles us in how small we are, how connected we could be, and the beauty of what a little bit of patience can do. That's nice. That's really nice.
Number 10, an apple a day. If you threw an apple at somebody today, that would be assault. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. You can't huck food at people. Now, then, ever. Let's just not do that anymore. But in ancient Greek days, it was a little different, dare I say. The apple, back then, had quite the symbolism attached to it. The apple was sacred to Aphrodite. This was a symbol for the goddess of love. So, to throw an apple at somebody, that meant you were throwing your heart at them, right? How romantic is that? Just a nice apple with bugs in it. You're like, here you go, there's lunch. Ancient flirting, my friend. The more you know. Maybe those trees in The Wizard of Oz weren't mean. Maybe they weren't mean at all. Maybe they were just trying to express their love by throwing apples aggressively at everyone involved. Number 9, raining iguanas. Okay, we're immediately dipping back into the weird side of this list. Here we go. Back in 2018, this was wild. I read about this and I'll never forget. Lives rent-free right in my head. Florida got another odd headline. There you go, classic Florida. This time it was frozen iguanas falling from the skies. Yeah, how do you not pick up that paper, right? Florida got hit with a massive snowfall, their first big one in 28 years. So these cold-blooded guys started to fall from suburban tree branches, right? They didn't see it coming at all. People were just walking to get groceries and iguanas are freezing and falling off trees right in front of them. The craziest thing is that they're just paralyzed. They're not dead, obviously. So later, they would come back to life after they, you know, de-thaw. Sounds so zombie-like when you say it like that. They're just lying there and then all of a sudden they're like, what day is it? Was it a snowfall? Oh God. Winter has come. Number 8, the Philadelphia experiment. Okay, a little more darker. Let's do it. Perhaps one of the most bizarre tales when it comes to other dimensions. This one has credibility behind it. It pops up on my Reddit feed a lot, so I can't help but not talk about it. The 1943 Philadelphia experiment. This World War II conspiracy theory takes place on the USS Eldridge, this destroyer-class ship. So it wasn't small, it was quite large. A lot of people on board, a lot of heads, a lot of witnesses. And they were conducting on this ship these secret experiments in order to gain power over naval warfare, obviously at the time. Now, one of these experiments was to create this technology that makes the ship invisible on radar. That's the important note. It was supposed to be invisible on radar. But when the generators were fired up, the hull apparently lit up with this green and blue light. Then the ship itself actually disappeared. Invisible in real life, not just on radar. Boom, gone, just like that. It was then seen at a naval shipyard in Virginia before the same thing happened again, and then it appeared back in Philadelphia. Now this sounds a bit intense, but when you hear about the crew on board, it only gets worse. Some went mad after the dimensional dip, of course, while others had physical effects from this cosmic commute. Yeah, some haunting details in that one. Some body parts that got mixed up with, yeah, I can't even talk about it. You get it. If you've seen the Cloverfield paradox, it's kind of like that. Some blooping and blipping, and then some arms getting stuck in some walls. There you go. Number 7, Ellen Shannon. Heading over to the late 1800s for this one. I gotta warn you, it's of course pretty dark. In 1870, we obviously didn't have the same safety requirements as we do today for anything, like at all. For example, if you wanted to read before bed, you didn't have a Kindle or an iPad. Hell, you didn't even have a nightlight, but you did have a kerosene lamp. Always coming in handy, those kerosene lamps. See, Ellen had used R.E. Danforth's non-reactive burning fluid. And dare I say, the obvious happened. The fluid reacted. Yeah, her tomb in Pennsylvania reads, in memory of Ellen Shannon, aged 26 years old, who was fatally burned March 21st, 1870, by the reaction of a lamp filled with R.E. Danforth's non-reactive burning fluid. Yeah, they just called him out right there, right in public on the actual tomb. I gotta say, I agree with that. That's cool. If some idiot's gonna cause your horrible demise, yeah, roast them. Let people know. Let people know who's responsible. That's like Twitter nowadays, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, this so-and-so is an asshole. Send tweet. Boop. It's there forever. Number 6, military dolphins. Yep, I said military dolphins. Here we are, we're almost halfway through our list. We'll get a little more weird now. Iran has plenty of nuclear capabilities, but they also have trained dolphins now too, so, good game, folks. Back in 2000, Iran bought this fleet of trained dolphins from Russia. Just Russians doing things. But they were trained, supposedly by the Soviet Union, to attack ships, and yes, you guessed it, attack people. We have Navy SEALs and military dolphins. Is this Aquaman 2? What's happening right now? Well, recently, and I mean that as in 2018 recent, satellite photos revealed a Russian naval base in Syria with pens that are commonly used for holding dolphins. Yeah, so these dolphins are active, perhaps, right now. That's so terrifying. Russia and the US have a fleet of trained dolphins to detect mines, but now Iran is also in the mix as well. So 3 powers in the dolphin game. What an odd standoff that would be in the water. They're all eating at each other. Number 5, enlisted bear. During World War II, a Polish army unit enlisted a real-life Syrian brown bear named Wojciech to serve with them, because yeah, what could go wrong, right? I just watched that bear movie, I don't know. Wojciech had been found as a cub in Iran by Polish soldiers and of course adopted as their very own mascot. Again, sure, why not? Now, as he grew up, Washtek became an integral part of the unit, right? He helped carry around ammunition and other heavy supplies that only a bear could carry. Fair, I guess. And he quickly became popular among the soldiers. They all loved him. They would play with him and feed him cigarettes and beer, you named it. He loved it all. He'd eat the glass, probably. He even learned how to salute, a skill he would often perform when given a bottle of beer. He's like, thank you, sir. And he'd open it on his nails. So scary, so scary. Washtek's presence helped boost the morale of soldiers, and he became a beloved symbol of the unit's fighting spirit, because why, of course he did. After the war, Washtek was demobilized along with the rest of the unit, and then he spent the rest of his life at the Edinburgh Zoo in Scotland, where he continued to be a, of course, popular attraction. He's like still saluting people and stuff. They're like, it's all good, man, it's all good, you're safe now, you can chill. Today, he's still celebrated as a symbol of the bond between animals and humans in times of war. That's crazy. They got a real life bear to do that. It's terrifying. I just watched a movie about a bear doing some crazy stuff with some illicit substances, and it seemed way scarier than that somehow. Number 4, Violet Jessop. Violet Jessop was a British ocean liner stewardess who somehow survived 3 major shipwrecks in the early 20th century. Not 1, not 2, 3. That's crazy. She's known for all these incredible tales of survival and her courage in the face of disaster, again, numerous times. First off, 1912, Jessop was working on board the RMS Titanic when it of course hit an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic Ocean. She managed to escape on one of the lifeboats, one of the few lifeboats, might I add, and survived the disaster. Just a few years later, 1916, she was working on the HMS Britannic when it struck a mine and sank in the Aegean Sea. Again, Jessop survived and managed to make it to safety. Somehow. Now at this point you're like, okay, she's not gonna do it a 3rd time, right? No possible way. In 1940, Jessop was working on board the RMS Queen Mary when it too collided with another ship and suffered significant damage. So once again, Jessop survived another disaster and went on to work another ocean liner for many years. Yeah, she's still worked on ocean liners after all 3 of those. She's like, oh, it is what it is. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Jessop's incredible tale of survival has of course made her a legendary figure in the history of ocean travel and a symbol of courage and resilience in the face of disaster. I'm baffled by this. That's crazy. You think after the 2nd one you definitely quit, right? Incredible, incredible. Number 3, the Dybbuk box. I don't like haunted items. This one here, definitely a haunted item. My ears are draining as I'm doing this, so I'm like, ah. It's getting louder all of a sudden. This small wine cabinet got some attention after being sold on eBay back in 2003. Yeah, remember eBay? Me neither. The box was purchased by Kevin Mannis. Now, shortly after, he claimed that said box was haunted and had caused him and his family to experience a series of horrifying events and health problems. And of course, paranormal activity. How do you sell that? Hey, want this? No, not at all. Sounds like it's a terrible idea. He eventually sold the box to Jason Haxton, who ended up writing a book about his experience. Yeah, it was that bad. Some believe that opening this box can release malevolent spirits into the world. Now, its origins here go back to a woman who survived World War II. This box came from her estate. So the history behind it, it's dark and it's seen some days, that's for sure. And now it lives at the Haunted Museum, rightfully so. Remember that viral video of Post Malone touching this random haunted artifact? That was this box. That was the same one. Now he's falling off stage and stuff. No idea what's going on with Post. Zach Baggins, please keep an eye on this box. Thank you so much. Hit that thumbs up for ghost-proof glass. We really like that. It's the same glass they used in the movie 13 Ghosts. They just have that around the Dybbuk box. Matthew Lillard watches it the whole time. It's lovely. Number 2, Pompeii eruption. Let's hope this one doesn't happen again, because hot. Once a flourishing Roman city located near the Bay of Naples in Italy. That was, of course, until 79 AD, when Mount Vesuvius decided, I'm gonna explode. I'm gonna go off and bury the entire city and all its inhabitants under layers and layers of ash and pumice. How scary and horrible is that? The eruption was so powerful that it wiped out all life within a 16-mile radius. Yeah, it makes you think about Yellowstone National Park a bit, doesn't it? Or if it's terrifying, she does some random shit. Pompeii remained buried and forgotten for almost 1700 years until it was rediscovered in 1748. Today, Pompeii is, honestly, it's amazing. It's an archaeological site that offers a glimpse into ancient Roman life with well-preserved ruins of homes, public buildings, streets, artwork, you name it. There's a restaurant that's open now. They reopened a restaurant they found buried. That's incredible. And there's also a great amount of people who steal from this ancient landmark because Humans are so stupid. Yeah, how to get cursed. This is how you do it. Listen up. Tourists would steal fragments of monuments, literally pieces of the city they would pull out and then put it in their pocket. Yeah, put a little bit of Rome and take it home on our flight. And then put out my lovely fireplace there. That's great. 100 packages a year will get sent back to the archaeological superintendents, most of them being accompanied with a letter explaining all the bad luck that occurred after they took the piece. Yeah, don't take haunted pieces of Rome home with you. Don't take Rome home. That's what they should say. I'm gonna make a shirt and say, it's because they don't take Rome home. Everyone's like, what does that even mean? I'm like, watch the video. I don't know, there's a QR code on the back, scan it. And finally, number 1, James Dean's haunted car. James Dean's love for fast cars was well known, but sadly, because one of them was haunted. Apparently, let's talk about that one. One of these cars ultimately led to his tragic death at the age of 24, but some are now convinced that all of his cars were cursed in some way, shape, or form. There's a car curse, if you want to call it that. Dean's first vehicle was a Triumph Tiger T110 motorcycle. Now, it was involved in an accident that left him with a broken leg, which, where I'm about to go with things, is not bad, considering. His next car, a Porsche 550 Spider, is the one that he famously died in after colliding head-on with another vehicle, much worse than a broken leg, in my opinion. Now, that's already tragic enough. That's dark history right there. Could probably end the point. But after Dean's death, things happened. Afterwards, the Porsche was sold off and quickly became infamous for causing more accidents and more weird deaths. One of its owners even reported seeing the ghost of James Dean sitting in the passenger seat shortly before they crashed. That's really jarring. That would make me crash. If I saw that beside me, I'd be like, okay, let's see you later. Now, that car disappeared from public view in the late 1960s and has since been rumored to be hidden away by some collector who believes it to be cursed. So great, out of sight, out of mind. We love that. Another Porsche that James Dean owned was destroyed when it caught fire while being transported by a trailer. So 2 haunted cars. But a third Porsche that he'd ordered never made it to him because it was involved in an accident during transportation that killed that driver. So whether you believe in curses or not, there's no denying that James Dean's car collection has some dark, tragic history. Something's going on there, for sure. I don't have my license, and you know what? After that last point, I'm walking everywhere. That's it. I'm just speed walking everywhere with that big goofy belt. That's it. None of this, just this. That's so stupid. Number 10, same day, different vows. Okay, we'll start off with a nice bright mood, okay? Let's do this. CBS News reported recently, Fred and Lynette Dubendorf, husband and wife, they were taking a stroll down the beach with their dog, just living the life, right? The ideal picture, when they noticed a message in a bottle washed up on the shore. I'd be so excited, first of all, but I'd also be concerned because I have seen Castaway. Could be anything in there, I don't know. This message could go one of 2 ways, but either way, I'm reading it. What's going on? Could be from Survivor, you know? It could be from an island.
Taylor, Travis spoke.
They opened it, and inside they found wedding vows from another couple, Melody Kloska and Matt Bears. Yeah, they had recently got married on a beach on Lake Michigan, and word spread rather quickly via the waterways, I guess. Thing is, their wedding date was the same as the couple who found the message. They took it as a sign that both pairs were meant to be, and they sent a surprising letter to the lost couple's address. That'd be kind of creepy though on one hand, wouldn't it be? Hey, I found that message in a bottle. Here you go. Nice address, by the way. Love the furniture. Are you guys still together?
Number 9. Run, rabbit, run. Yeah, so apparently Australia has like every animal in the world except the cute little fuzzy ones. Yeah, every stinger, wing, and venom you can imagine. But no cutesies. No. Well, they do now. In 1859, English settler Thomas Austin had been officially noted for the introduction of rabbits into Australia. Yeah, Oryctolagus caniculus, to be exact. Even though rabbits had already kind of been brought over in the first fleet to the land of Oz. Not much, couple here, couple there. But these rabbits, however, yeah, they started migrating across Australia and destroyed around 2 million acres of land. Pesky widow wabbits. Yeah, basically excessive overgrazing caused widespread panic, damage, and sickness through and to the vegetation. Mate, they're bloody everywhere, these little devilish kangaroos, mate. Long bloody ears out to here, mate. Fangs down to here. Terrifying little things. Not like they're small, man. Yeah, little hoppy guys. During the 19th century, the country had set up rabbit-proof fences to protect its pastoral lands. Is there even such thing as rabbit-proof fences? Finally, in the 1950s, the Australian government had had enough. Started to use biological methods to control the excessive population. Yeah, sorry little guys. This guy's bright idea is believed to have an immense impact on the abundance of natural resources in Australia. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Thomas. Now we have no carrots, man.
Number 8, legendary musical neighbors. It's weird how similar some of your neighbors are, right? Growing up, we had like 3 Davids on our street. They're all cops. Isn't that weird? I don't know, I just thought of that. They all loved cutting their lawn at 7 a.m. too. What a coincidence. How weird is that? Well, back in the 60s, rock icon Jimi Hendrix and the 18th century composer George Friedrich Handel, well, they were both neighbors. A couple hundred years apart, but neighbors nonetheless. They both lived in 23 Brook Street and 25 Brook Street in London. Now, had George been born, 200 years later, we'd have gotten the greatest collab of all time. Would have been like Watch the Throne, but times 3. If you're local, of course you'll know there's a site there now, it's a famous landmark and all that jazz. But in terms of coincidences, there's music in the air. Something's going on Brook Street. Pick up an instrument or two, walk by, try the harp out. In that room specifically.
Number 7, friendly football. I'm actually happy that this really happened and it's not just like a heartfelt Pepsi commercial that they drummed up in a meeting. Growing up, I thought this was fake due to the circumstances, but nope, this actually happened. During Christmas of 1914, a truce was held between Germany and the UK. Like, these people were trying to take each other out, but Christmas is Christmas. They decorated their shelters with lights and colors, exchanged gifts at no man's land, and played a game of football between the soldiers. Yeah, isn't that nice? Soccer, of course, not football. Just like dudes smashing into each other. Both Germany and the UK refused to declare an official ceasefire, but both sides declared a temporary ceasefire on their own. They gathered and celebrated 'Tising the season by singing carols, wrapping up gifts for each other, drinking some drinks, laughing some laughs, and of course, a slide tackle or two. Yeah, captains, come to me. Yeah, it's gonna be a red card for Gunter. Yeah, back 5, please. I said back 5. Kicker, go ahead, man.
Number 6, Yanni and Laurel. Okay, for our halfway point here, we have to throw in a fun recent one as well. This is kind of unbelievable, I don't know. I hope people look back on these in 1,000 years, they'll be so confused what happened with Yanni and Laurel. Who were these people? Why do they talk about them so much? Remember this? Yanni, Laurel, back in 2018? I only heard Yanni for like 2 weeks straight, and then one day I listened and I couldn't go back. It was just Laurel all of a sudden. Instead of Yanni, I went from Yanni to Laurel. Just like that, my life changed. I don't know what happened there. This got everybody talking. What is this phenomenon that happens? Same with the dress fiasco. Is it blue? Is it white? Is it gold? I don't know. What the hell is actually happening here? Well, many believe these viral illusions are proof that we're living in a simulation. Yeah, didn't expect me to say that, did ya? These arguments, no, the dress is blue, it's white, whatever. These situations prove that we perceive reality in our own way. Everybody's living their own individual perceived reality, so sometimes it always doesn't align. Sometimes I hear Yanni, and then sometimes I hear Laurel. And then I lose my mind. I can't go back now. God, I hated this so much. The dress was in 2015, the Yanni Laurel thing was 2018, so I don't know. We're due for another glitch in the Matrix. Will it be an auditory mix-up? Will it be visual like the dress? What's next? Either way, I'm out, and I'm not on board. Also, it's blue.
Number 5, Joan of Arc. Finally, a woman in the Middle Ages. Who'da thunk? Joan of Arc was considered and still is revered the heroine of France for her role in the Siege of Orleans during France's 100-year war with England. Joan of Arc, a peasant with faith on her side, had believed that God had chosen her to lead France in victory against England and had spoken to her since she was young. At only age 17, she had stolen men's armors, a white horse, and like a Valkyrie riding into battle, she had convinced an entire army that she was appointed by God to win. And then did! That's the most badass thing I've ever heard in my entire life. After such a miraculous victory, her reputation spread among France, and upon her capture and death at 19, the Maid of Orleans herself would forever live on as one of the greatest saints and symbols of the country of France. Number 4, Henry V. Another war? All these people do is kill each other. Does anyone fish? Or golf? No one, huh? Just swords and heads, swords and heads. A history itself. This time, England beats France. King Henry V, Prince Hal himself, leans into his kingly duties, demolishing France in what Shakespeare would delve into years to come. The Battle of Agincourt is one of England's most celebrated victories and was one of the most important triumphs in the 100 Years' War. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. Henry V, prologue. Good stuff. How come these guys didn't just rap battle or play soccer or something? Like, an arrow right through the chest is way worse than a red card, just saying. Hey, speaking of soccer. Number 3, mob football. I'm not talking about the mafia. Put 1,000 on Brady, would you? I'm talking about mob football, also known as folk football. It's just like our modern day soccer. Town versus town. Except it has an unlimited amount of players. And there's only 2 rules to the game. Get the inflated pig's bladder over the opposing team's lines on the other side of town, and no murdering. I mean, I guess this is closer to rugby? Yeah, this is literally just rugby. This game was played competitively and eventually outlawed at Oxford University in 1555. Just a guy named Jeeves in a polo. Oh yeah, I play mob football at Oxford. Yeah, I'm also in a frat. This game got so out of hand it was banned numerous times in England. There is great noise in the city caused by hustling over large balls from which many evils may arise which God forbid. We command and forbid on behalf of the king, on pain of imprisonment, such game to be used in the city of the future. Thankfully this game has calmed down over the years and now has become the most popular played and watched game across the world. Go Liverpool! Number 2. The printing press. The printing press is a machine that was designed for the mass printing of text, mostly in form of books and newspapers. With an unknown date of origin, first invented in China, this machine, designed in the 15th century by Johannes Gutenberg, was a revolutionary new form of writing which would only change the direction of history with the mass production of uniform text. Long story short, people didn't have to get the world's worst wrist cramp writing Hamlet over and over again. To be, or not to be, 86 more folios? The alphabetical metal keys would be placed into the device and slammed into the paper, pressing ink upon the parchment. You know there's gotta be some books half written in purple ink because they just ran out of black. Come on, we've all been there. Ink's expensive. Number 1. William Shakespeare. The Bard himself, arguably the most influential writer of the English language. William Shakespeare was born in Stratford, England. One of the easiest ways we can look back into the dialogue and lifestyle used by the people living in the Middle Ages. This playwright documents the world in which he lives from 1564 to 1616. Due to Shakespeare's unbelievable talent for building and fabricating an array of diverse stories and characters via players, modern day is able to see the Middle Ages and the similarities and differences the people were experiencing. His plays are based in the environment that they were written in. He writes about diseases, he writes about monarchy, he writes about women's rights. Okay, so no one actually got turned into a donkey by some fairies in the woods, but some of those wars actually did happen, and some of those kings and queens were really twisted. How this man created so many brilliant works and stories, all part of the mystery. What do you think? Genius? Or did the guy have some help? One man in his time plays many parts.